guys, we will soon start again. So if you're interested in the next piece, which is going to be on Crust and its storage solution with a focus on DePIN, please gather around, take a seat. If you prefer to stay standing, that's cool too. So with us today, we have Maxime, who is going to be talking on this very subject of resilient storage solution with an accent on DePIN. Maxi, please take it away.
Thank you, host. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Maxime from Crust Network, which is a decentralized storage protocol. And I'm so glad to be here today because this is the third time in this year I have been in Bangkok in the sub0 reset. I guess you have a good time in Bangkok. And today my topic gonna be about DePIN. I think DePIN is not a very heated topic in the Polkadot DAO substrate ecosystem today. So the reason I pick up this topic is simply because Crust Network is a DePIN system. We organize the massive storage devices in the real world, and we build a protocol, we build interfaces to different users. So this is a consolidated graph of how we deliver these storage solutions to different users. We have decentralized de-hosting for websites and the apps like Uniswap and AV. We can store NFT metadata and make sure that it didn't get lost. And we can store general file storage and encrypted files for personal purpose and media storage for social file and maybe for GameFi. And also we provide products to different users who have different preferences. We expose our API and interfaces for on-chain contract users on EVM chains and other blockchains. And we have Crust files, which works like a personal disk. And we have Crust Cloud, where you can mint NFT to have a storage bucket for you to store your files inside. And the files belong to you permanently. So let's go back to the topic of DePIN. Basically, we have, this is a screenshot from the dashboard of our official site, which is, I screenshotted yesterday. So the current status of Crust Network is we have more than 700 petabytes storage capacity available on Crust Network. And we have about 1,500 storage nodes across the globe. And we have close to 3 million storage orders, which has been placed on the Crust Network blockchain. And besides, the storage fee is very, very cheap compared with centralized storage solutions and the cloud services. So Crust Network is not a new project. It's a very old. It is between one of the earliest supporters of Substrate and the Polkadot ecosystem. The mainnet has been running for more than 3 years. 3 years is a very long time in the crypto space. So I think maybe it's the time for a review. But today is not gonna be like a very serious review of what we did right, what we did wrong, and maybe some milestones we achieved in the past. It's gonna be, let's take it easy. It's gonna be some ideas and thoughts that we wanna share with you, especially on the technical perspective, and maybe a little bit on the business perspective on the DePIN topic. And I will focus more on how we see DePIN is going to evolve itself to the next generation in the next 3 years or in the next 5 years. And another thing I want to mention is I was giving a speech for cross-network in a conference like sub0 and other meetups of chains, offline or online. But very few times I talk about DePIN because we believe that if we position ourselves as a storage protocol or storage solution provider, it will be more valuable or more elegant. So we didn't talk about DePIN very often because DePIN is just about some hardware networks. But today, I think in a very different way. Cross-network is essentially a network that organizes massive hardware resources across the globe and deliver these available storage spaces for all kinds of interfaces and applications to the end users. So the value lies in the ability of organizing these massive resources, the massive nodes across the globe. So I would say cross-network is all about a DePIN system, and we build a protocol and we build interfaces exposed to on-chain users and application users and developers based on this hardware resources network. So I'm going to talk about 2 subtopics today about how I see DePIN is going to evolve in the future. So the first topic is going to be about DePIN will go multimodal. Okay, the word multimodal is frequently talked because of generative AI, because we talk about AI models every day. And in the context of AI, we have a lot of different forms of input into the AI model to help us process and generate content from the model. Like we can have text, we can have images and videos and audios, and signals from real-world sensors, everything. So this is called multimodal because it's basically about a model that can process very different forms of input, and also for the output we can have different forms just like the input. So this is why multimodal is very important, because the input from end users gonna be like multimodal, not monomodal. So let's go back to the context of DePIN. I'll tell you a story of cross-network, which is happened 2 years ago when I am contacting some business resources and potential users of cross-network. At that time, we were persuading some of our clients to migrate their storage solution just for some code storage, for some files and medias, to cross-network from Amazon AWS and other storage providers from centralized cloud. And we told them the price gonna be pretty cheap. It's far more cheap than you're using Amazon AWS. But the problem was this migration is very difficult for these clients, for these web service providers from AWS to cross-network. That was a real big challenge for cross-network. What's the reason? The reason is pretty simple. The fact is, we can provide a very cheap storage for files, for medias in petabytes. But the problem is, on AWS, you are not using that for just the code storage. You want bandwidth, you want software deployment, you want everything. But on cross-network, you have storage for code files, for the files that you just want to make some copies and so you don't get lost. So that is the problem of why I'm talking about multimodal, because the real demand from our clients in the real world, what they want is the services that can give you multimodal capabilities, including storage, including when you want to fetch these files, you need bandwidth, you need availability, real time. And you just need everything. You need a lot of deployment, and you need to make sure that these services are always online from the centralized cloud. So that was the real problem and the lesson we learned from offering services to real-world demands. So we go back to the definition of DePIN. It is, everybody knows that it is short for decentralized physical infra network. So when you talk about DePIN in this way, you are positioning DePIN network as a supplier of some certain resources. But how I see DePIN from these lessons and from our experiences and know-how is a little bit different, in that I think DePIN is more about matching supply to customer demand in the real world. The real customer demand gonna be like very complex. They want everything. They just don't want single resources like storage and bandwidth and computing powers. So let's say, from my perspective, the mainstream of the market in the real world gonna be multimodal. But I'm not talking that there are no customers that want multimodal services, but that is a niche market. But when I'm talking like this, I'm not saying that niche market is 100% not a valuable market. I can give you an example. There is a DePIN project, Arweave. Everybody know Arweave. I think this is a very good example of very successful niche market maker, because they find the best clients in the Web3 space. These clients, they want the content generated by their users, like SocialFi platforms, like Miro. They just want this content to be stored on a decentralized network and make sure that this content can always be available and don't get lost. These contents are very small in size. It's like just several kilobytes, no more than 1 megabyte. But they are willing to pay comparatively a high cost if we calculate the storage cost per gigabyte every year. So they're willing to pay more than you're using the Amazon AWS and maybe cross-network and maybe Filecoin. So this is a very good example, I think, who make it in the niche market. But if we look into the future, well, if we think DePIN is going to make a big thing in the future, niche market is definitely not the main focus of other DePIN projects. So this is the first lesson we learned from our experiences. And the second topic I'm going to talk about is still from a technical perspective, and maybe I will talk about some business perspective as well in this subtopic. When we say DePIN, we have decentralized. But how decentralized should be enough, or how decentralized should be a good product market fit for a DePIN project who really wants to serve the real world demand? So technically speaking, this is something more about the design of the system. It's about the topology of the DePIN network we want from these distributed resources, hardwares, and devices. Let's take a look at this picture. Okay, maybe mesh network is a very good choice well, intuitively, mesh network is good because we can make these nodes connect with each other in a peer-to-peer way, just like IPFS node. And we can have these nodes prove their workloads and make other nodes trust the verification results. So everybody is happy because people believe that other nodes are not cheating. They are not stealing my incentives from my workloads. And maybe the centralized way, the ring, and other stuff are not that good. But I want to say in this chapter is that it's not always the case. And here is a form that I just made last week, and I reviewed 3 mainstream resources type, which is bandwidth, storage, and computing power. And I made this conclusion. For each type of physical resources, what people generally think is the best topology, the best decentralized level for the network. But I want to say what I think the best topology is. This may be different from the people generally think. And I will explain why is that. So for the, okay, this is gonna be maybe gonna be a little boring because I will talk about some technical concepts and technical perspectives when we are building up a DePIN network. Let's start from the simple one, the storage. People generally believe the more distributed, the better, which is right. Okay, my answer is yes. We want a more distributed network. But the thing worth noting is that it's not always about the decentralization level. It's actually about the availability and assurance. Okay, availability is very important because if you want to fetch the files from a decentralized storage network, you have to make sure that there is node responding your requirement and you can get the files. If you do not get responded, it makes no sense even if your files are there, safe and sound. You don't get lost, but you cannot get it. You cannot just retrieve your file when you want to use it. So availability is the first important thing for this storage network. And the next important thing about that is assurance. Assurance, that means that you are pretty sure about your file won't get lost in this network. So this is the real challenge because if you store something on AWS, you know that they have the business trust, they have the business reputation, and there is there's no way or there is no incentive for them to drop your files and get them lost. But for a DePIN network, if the incentives from tokens stopped, so the nodes won't get incentivized anymore, how we will make sure that these nodes will continue to serve and store your files? So this is the real challenge technically. But basically, I will say that the more distributed the network is, the better. That's right. But the thing is slightly different in the bandwidth or network resources. Also, people generally think the more distributed the node is, the network is more robust and resilient. But I would say, I want a network that serves bandwidth to users. I want them geographically clustered, like they are clustered in every single region. And I want them to be scheduled in a very centralized way. So I think this is kind of anti-intuitive because people believe DePIN project should be decentralized and distributed. But From our lesson that I have the conclusion from the first subtopic, the DePIN is all about serving the real users from the real world. So decentralized is not always the top priority. The top priority is we can deliver what the customers want. So what does the customer want from bandwidth network? They want a local node cluster, which is a strong guarantee in the service capability, because you know there are a bunch of nodes there and they are physically very close to you. So they can deliver the cache very quickly and with a very low cost, because people know that the bandwidth is very expensive, especially when you require video streaming from like YouTube or other platforms, and especially when you request these streams from a very remote server. And the second thing about a bandwidth resource network is people want you guarantee that you are online, especially in rush hours. And this requires dynamic matching. I call that dynamic matching. It's always changing, and you need to always match the supply to the demand in, let's say, 2 seconds or 3 seconds, or you will be late. You will make people wait when they open the link of a YouTube video. So that's not going to happen in the real world because you just have 1 second. So you have to do that with a very strong scheduling schemes, which requires a very centralized node to schedule these devices and nodes in a distributed clustered network in every region. So I think this is one of the things that is not that intuitive for people to understand in the DePIN ecosystem. So I think that is the reason many projects trying to deliver bandwidth and network resources to people, they failed because they do not meet the real demand from the real world users. And the last type I'm gonna talk about is, I think this is more heated because of the AI craze. The people talk about AI, and AI training and inference need computing resources, especially the GPU clusters. So we can see today there are many projects that are trying to deliver the DePIN network based on the computing resources, lots of them. And they are trying to deliver a solution where they will cluster the GPU network, they cluster the resources and the devices into a geographically clustered node, and they combine these computing resources, the computing powers, and they say, okay, this is capable for training a model that is deployment on the edge side. But that is not the case from my perspective. I would say the best way to do a computing DePIN network is we should provide an ROI-oriented matching with mixed supplies. Okay, I will explain this in more details. What is an ROI-oriented matching with mixed supplies? First of all, when we think about the supplies in the DePIN network, especially when we're talking about computing power, there should be central nodes and edge side nodes run parallel. They should be working together to provide computing power, and they are equally important. It's not about we should forget the central node and we should revolutionize the central cloud services that offer GPU computing power and make them totally distributed and scattered. The reason is, from a technical side, it's because we have a natural limitation when we are using GPU to compute, because the inner input-output is the bottleneck when you are delivering computing power with GPU devices. So clustering should be very low efficient, because you cannot distribute an AI model and make them train and inference in distributed nodes. So that's not going to work with pure clustering. And the second point of this of the reason that I want IOI-oriented network is because that's more from a business perspective. Because if you want to maintain a successful DePIN network that really generates revenue from the real-world users, you have to do one thing, that is match resources based on the value of the demand. You should match more resources to the high value demand and match cheaper resources to low value demand. That is the fact, and if you don't do that, you'll die. So this is what I call that IOI-oriented network. If you want to do that, you have to keep parallel running the central node and edge-side node, and maybe the client-side node. But we are not there right now. That maybe cost like 5 years to make the computing power totally distributed to the edge side. And the reason for that is, this is from my observation of how the computing power gonna evolve with the time going in the next 5 years or in the next 10 years. There's a trend. The computing power we use today, it's more concentrated in the centralized cloud. The reason is that 70% of the computing power is used to train the AI model, not for the inference. But when we build these AI models in the next 10 years, we will use them in the real world. So maybe 70% or maybe 90% of the computing power is used for inference. So if you need a network that can deliver computing power for inference, you need devices on the edge side or even on the client side, not centrally clustered or deployed on the very remote services. So that is the reason I would say that the resource should be IOI-oriented and parallel with centralized ones and edge-side ones. So they are very different, right? And I'll give you very quick takeaways because time is up. First, from the demand side, demand is always important than supply. And we should think about what people really want from the resources. And Web3 are interacting with the real world, so the real world demand is going to be like very complex. And from the supply side, DePIN don't have to be very decentralized, don't have to be very idealistic. So what's important may be the verifiability and permissionlessness, that we make sure that we are equal to all the participants of these hardware devices because they want to return from DePIN network. And localization is key to DePIN, and we are now looking for local partners, especially in Southeast Asia. So this is some last word from me. If you are interested in the DePIN ecosystem, and especially if you have local resources in Southeast Asia, please feel free to contact me, Maxi3 on Telegram. And we can talk about how we can build and extend the community and the miner network in the Southeast Asia and maybe other areas in the world. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Maxi. Does anyone have a question in the audience? No question? All right, thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, host.
Stick around. In 10 minutes, we will have Kian, who is an engineering lead at Parity Tech, tell us more about the latest tips and tricks for Frame. So make sure to stick around.